Okay, so love. This is the field of the 500s. So, love, it's more than like I said before, it's more than, from last week as a recap, love is more than an emotion, it's a spiritual state. So when we get to love, it gets to, in the 500s, we start to get to a place of an inner peace that resides within, rather than a loving of a this and a that. Thoughts which often go with this field are, how can I be of help to you? And how can I comfort you? So those are thoughts that often predominate in the fields of love. So a general thing that happens in consciousness is that what we give out freely tends to ripple back to us at some point. So it's the laws of as you sow, so shall you reap. So as you treat others, eventually it comes back. So the idea of unity is that we're all one. So if I help and I'm loving towards others, eventually I find that the world is loving back towards me. So I found this, I've shared this story before, but I found this very much so with my relationship with medical doctors. Before spirituality, I was very, very antagonistic to medical doctors. And in fact, I was so anti-medication that, and I'd started when I got the kidney failure, my spirituality wasn't that high. But as I was applying the course and also coming into 12 steps, I had a history on my medical reports of them writing down that I refuse medications. So when it came down to my kidneys getting really bad and needing a dialysis machine, and when I requested a transplant, they said no, because they had records of me that I'd refused medication in the past. But luckily I was doing a lot of spiritual work, and I started doing service in the fellowships, and then what happened was it was like a gift. I had there was a person there who was like kind of an advocate, and he spoke to the doctors that changed, and so I got the transplant. And actually now I had a total shift in perception. I see now that doctors are actually trying to help. I see them as an extension of the love of God. So and I actually see now, so I had such a shift. Before I thought, the way I saw medicines were they're full of bad side effects and you shouldn't touch them at any costs. And now I see that there's positive benefit. It's just a shift in perception. And also with the doctors now, often they treat me really, really well. And like I've shared before, I've had such miracles just by applying the cancelling of beliefs with the course. So it's going to be in my book. I think it's one of the big things which I can report as a hard fact, because I actually went back and looked at my old, because every time the doctors give an assessment of me, they send a report back to my GP, and I have a copy of those letters. So I looked back. After my transplant, I had 13 medications, and within about a couple of years, I was down to 1. And that's just by using the course and having a shift that doctors are loving, and actually I can just let go of the negative effects of medication. And so my consultant said to me then, he doesn't know of anyone in the transplant clinic that takes less medication than me. And I remember, and then the pharmacist said to me that I was going to put the hospital out of business because I was hardly taking any medication. So as for a transplant patient, so it's just having that shift of attitude. So love is present everywhere, it just needs to be recognized, you see, for me. So it's like when you let go of judgments and resentments, then it's like you can see the love in everybody and everything. It's recognized through the intrinsic nature within. So it's letting go of the negative blocks. The negative blocks are the thoughts and feelings that I'm holding on to. And then the world is seen to be full of love. If you don't hold on to any judgment or resentment, then everything is seen to be loving and beautiful. Love facilitates. I also shared this story. I'll share it again. I've shared it a few times, but for me it's one of the most wonderful stories I heard Hawkins share. And that was the power of love as demonstrated by a duck. And it was one of the most touching stories I had. So in America, a duck hunter shot a duck, and the male duck fell to the ground. The duck hunter went over to the duck, and then the female duck flew down and just put her wing over the male duck, as the duck hunter came. And I believe that the duck hunter had such a shift in perception, seeing the power of love of the female duck just sheltering the male duck with a wing. I believe he took a photo, as Hawkins writes in his book. And that picture was put in an American newspaper. And the power, Hawkins, through Hawkins' testing, with his own testing, that picture of a female duck with its wing over the male ducks stopped many thousands of duck hunters from doing it. And for me, it's just that amazing power of love that can transform. And I can really imagine it, because I was guessing that the duck hunter saw that as a sport. You're just shooting an animal for fun. But seeing that the female duck was willing to sacrifice its own life just to shelter the male duck was enough to have him. I think it was more than enough. He actually took a picture and probably sent it to a newspaper. So he had that's the power of love. The other major story.
Sorry, but at that stage,
yeah.
the duck hunter had already killed the male duck, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
I would imagine. So I'm not sure. He didn't say, but I'd imagine it could be killed or at least severely injured. May not have been killed, totally killed. I don't know. But the female duck came and sheltered him. So that's the power of love. He also gave another great story. I remember actually, it was quite a famous story. I shared it last week in Canada. I think it was quite a famous thing because people from Canada coming to his lectures also shared back. You'll probably see it eventually on Hawkins' lectures, of some kind of mad gunman who took a number of hostages in Canada. It was quite a big story there. And a dog came up and wagged its tail and wanted to play with this guy who's had all of these hostages. And he had a shift in heart as well, and decided not to, just came to his senses and surrendered. And that was just the power of love, of a dog wanting to play with someone who'd just taken hostages of all of these people. So again, the power of love has such a strong effect on others. So love is also very, very transformational, as I've shared before. The love in groups can really, spiritual groups can really affect people. It had a very, very strong effect on me. I go to 12-step groups relating to food. And I remember just the energy. For me, it's like those who have recovered from a spiritual problem, through forgiveness, or even letting a negative habit go, like food or addiction. Just being in a room full of all those people is enough to severely change one's behaviour. So I remember early on, when I first went to these food meetings, which are based on surrendering to a higher power, and people having recovered, I used to go to what was called Safeway then, called Morrison's now, and used to buy donuts, bags of donuts, for just eating on food. And I remember having gone to this OA meeting, this spiritual food meeting, and afterwards I went to the supermarket and I just looked around the aisle, but I couldn't pick anything up. So I decided just to walk out. And I was actually, like, my ego was quite perplexed because I couldn't buy the food after the spiritual meeting. But, there had been some shift in me. And I see that's quite common, actually, in all of the 12-step meetings, alcohol, food. People often don't pick up that day when they've gone, just to be immersed in the love of the energy of a group meeting. So, yeah, I was also sharing this very quickly. But it was quite funny because I was working on this presentation of love, so me and my mother feed the pigeons in our garden, but our neighbour can't stand pigeons. So, you know, I got off at the bus, and my neighbour was there as well at the bus. So we walked down, and I usually get on well with her. But today she mentioned, that day she mentioned the pigeons, you know, before last week. So I was just practicing unconditional love with her. Whatever she said, I was just going to just nod and listen to her all the way. And she was saying about pigeons, and, you know, basically they're like rats, and they bring rats, and all of this stuff. So I was just nodding and listening to her. And then she suddenly came out. I thought it was just a miracle. She said, "Oh, but you should be, love your neighbours and be tolerant of your neighbours." You know, and I didn't say a word. I was just listening to her, and she had this thing. I just listened to what she had to say, and then she just shifted suddenly. So that's, I believe that was just me practicing on the principles of just being unconditionally loving and allowing the other person to speak and to be as loving as possible. So I thought that was just a real miracle when she just suddenly came out of that.
Yeah, and a little, a very small confirmation of being loving.
Yes.
When I moved into my flat, I was playing some music, and it was too loud for this couple next door, a very young couple, and he complained to the landlord, and the landlord came and told me that my music was too loud. So I think it was that big a problem, because I turned it down, and I haven't put it up high since.
Yeah.
And but anyway, the young man next door, he was married to the Muslim woman with the what do they call it?
The veil.
Yeah, the whole thing. And so and I thought, oh, well, they're probably very religious. But I said morning, and I said sorry about the music, and didn't answer me. And for 10 years, I meet him, and I say hello, he didn't answer me. And then they quite recently, every time I'd run into him, I say hello. He wouldn't answer me.
He wouldn't?
No. And but today, I've been on my way out, and I know that he was doing himself or supervising washing the common area, the carpets.
Yes.
And he gave me a big smile and a hello.
Maybe he could not hear or something. He's got a hearing problem.
No, it was definitely without malice, it was the proper smile.
No. Previously, when he
no, he just was holding on to playing, waking him up. I don't think I woke him up, because I'm not up that late. I do like my music. So
that was a miracle.
Yeah, but I'm delighted. It made me feel great, because I didn't like running. And he's related to my landlord. He's my landlord's brother-in-law or something. You know.
Okay.
So yeah. So that's really good.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah. Young fellow, he's from in his 30s. Yeah.
I believe, you know, for me it's that thing of just being loving all the time, no matter what, no matter how the other person responds. And that for me is, you know, I've shared before with my mother. And I thought it would be totally impossible, you know, because she's a food addict in food. She's not in the type of spiritual program that we do, and we had such a bad relationship with her. But just practicing what you've been sharing, Eamon, just doing the course and various other spiritual tools through many years, step 4s within the 12 steps. It's like now we have 99% of the time a loving relationship. And what I did with her, which I've shared before, is, you know, it would be like, no matter how she behaves, because the title of my book is going to be called Bulletproof Peace, no matter how she behaves, still to be loving back in response. And my way was not to get hooked in to what she said, and just to be nice, and just offer a cup of tea at the end, you see. So she'd come in, and say, you know, what have you done with your life? You're a failure. You know, your room's in a mess. She liked to say that one to me regularly. It's true, actually. It can often be in a mess. And then, you know, I'd listen to her, and I wouldn't say anything back, just like, you know, and then offer her a cup of tea. And now it's like, you know, just recently played Snakes and Ladders with her a few days ago, and we have lovely conversations. Sometimes watch TV together, bonding. So it's just that thing. And I think as well, you know, it's just that offering love continuously. And then sometimes you can have a miracle, just like you shared. So I believe that.
Yeah. It's surprising how good a small thing like that can make you feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he doesn't live next door to me anymore. He lives in the basement. And so I do run into him all the time, and I'm good friends with
Oh, you run into him all the time?
Yeah.
You must have got fed up. You've always yelled.
Yeah, right.
So I better respond
No,
now.
I give him a proper apology from the heart.
Okay.
So maybe he picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure,
Yeah.
Oh.
To me, it's like he couldn't hold on to the resentment.
Yes.
Yeah. I can understand his wife not talking very much, because I think the religion they're not supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
But she smiles. I know she has no resentment.
Okay.
Yeah. Must be difficult all day long. She wears this thing.
Okay. Okay, so when you get one thing that to be aware of in a lot of spiritual, when you get to the field of love, when a miracle occurs, it's not for to let the ego take ownership for what's happened when miracles occur. So that then can create. That happens as well a lot. You know, in the food groups I go to, we often say that when you practice spiritual principles, it's by God's grace that we become abstinent or we change. It's not because I'm so good that there's change. So that then keeps the humility. So in the fields of love, it's actually the absence. So you could say that it's the absence of your ego and just being loving to this person for long periods of time. The miracle was divine in origin, in shift in perception. Yeah, so we have gratitude. Okay, so what are the kind of payoffs that we have to let go of in the field of love that needs to be let go of? So you need to be able to surrender, to get to a more loving field, to surrender doubt, belief systems that one is holding on to that prevent the connection to love, perceptions, any perceptions that one is holding on to in the world, one needs to let go of that. Opinions, to let go of opinions, because holding on to opinions blocks love, and any attachments as well. And like I shared last week, even when you get to the higher fields, be willing to surrender that which is being held so that you can go higher. So even if you've got to a field of love, you could be willing to let that go to see if there's anything, as you're holding on to it, to see if there's a higher state. Like being in the field of just feeling lovingness, sometimes if you would let that go to see if there's anything beyond, you might go to ecstasy. Or if you might let go of the ecstasy, you might go into an infinite peace and stillness and silence. So sometimes one can I'm feeling a lot better than I was feeling before, so I just want to hold on to how I'm feeling now. Sometimes if you're willing to let go of how you're feeling now, something even better can take its place. So, okay, so what about, so there's love is like 500, but then you get to unconditional love. Unconditional love is more advanced than conditional love, of course. So what about unconditional love? So unconditional love, so how does that mean? To have unconditional love means to make no demands on others. It means to have no expectation of others, not to have a hidden agenda, not to keep on to an internal bookkeeping system within the brain. Like, I've done all of this for you, now I'm expecting you to do all of this, otherwise I'm going to hold a resentment. So it's love, love that is given without requirement, and love that is given with no attachment or expectation. So that's the highest form of love. But of course it makes perfect sense, because of the first thing I said was that love is a state. And how can you always access a state of love is if you commit to unconditional love. If you commit to unconditional love, then it means you cannot hold a resentment or a judgment, or to be unaccepting of the world, people, places, or situations as it arises in every moment. And paradoxically, if you did that, then this presence of love as a state would always be here, because the ego can't hook into anything and create the absence of love. And this comes into a major course-related thing. If you remove the blocks, then you get the truth, which is that love is always here. Love is the constant. So if love is always constantly here, timelessly present, as an eternal oneness, eternal unity, an eternal presence, then if you remove any judgment, attachment, any non-acceptance of the world, then its presence becomes revealed. It's like all the blocks are revealed to it. Hence, that's one of my intentions, unconditional love and enlightenment. Not being attached to thoughts, and not holding on to judgments or attachments or non-acceptance of people, places, and situations. So, I love the Course in Miracles. If there's a problem with a situation, you pray for a miracle to see the situation differently, and that can often bring divine. That has actually worked. I've suddenly seen situations differently. Also, in the food fellowships I go to, we have the resentment prayer, which I think is a lovely prayer, which is really which I do as part of that spiritual tradition. And the resentment prayer, so I pray to God for forgiveness. It could be I pray to God for forgiveness of my neighbour. God, I humbly ask you to remove my resentment against my neighbour. Please help me treat him with the same patience, tolerance, kindness and love I cheerfully grant to a sick person. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. And often when I do that prayer, I get this shift of like seeing them as being wrong and in judgment, to suddenly seeing them as being sick, or within their limitations of their of how their internal belief systems. And when I see that, so it goes from they're definitely wrong and I have resentment because they shouldn't be that way, to actually they're just programmed and they're just sick and they're just being who they are. So that really, really helps me.
What is it called? What prayer?
It's called the resentment prayer. So in the 12 steps that I go to, it's not a Course in Miracles yet.
No,
it's not a Course in Miracles prayer, but it's a prayer from. It comes from a book called the Big Book, and there they have a specific thing to help people with alcohol, and it's used by other fellowships, food, as well, just to let go of resentments. So just like with the Course, has a big thing on not holding on to grievances.
Yes, yeah.
And not being a victim. And so one of the big things in addiction is not hold, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
Don't hold on to any resentment. And for me, just like the Course is like removing the blocks to the eternal truth and love and presence that is here. And for me, that's the same, a similar thing. One of the founders there, Bill Wilson, who had a spiritual experience, says resentments block me off from the sunlight of the spirit. So for me, judgment, perception, resentments block you off from that eternal truth within. So that's just a different prayer.
Yeah. I find myself that actually my big thing that held me back most of my life was my relationship with my father.
Oh yes.
And lately I've come to the realization, why am I resentment to him? He never existed. He was never there, really, from a Course, So I'm all resentment of nothing. But it's kind of the penny dropped.
Yes.
And I think that's a result of just continuing. At a certain point, these pennies drop. Aha moment. So now I pray to Daddy every night.
It's like now you can only see the lovingness that's there.
Yeah.
Everything else is gone, and now more and more loving memories come back.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And there's only love there. So it's like all the resentment is gone. And that for me is like the course thing. So if I'm holding any resentment against anybody, then when I let that go, I'll be able to love them, which is true. You know, eventually one has compassion that they are, as Hawkins said, I mean, they're just doing the best they can with their interpretation of their beliefs. And everything, what really helped as well for non-judgmentalism is that the world is perfect the way it is, doesn't need judgment, but you get peace by just allowing everything to be itself and having compassion and love for everything. So then it's like, and then you see that everything is intrinsically innocent. And for me, the innocence, like the Course says that we're all sinless. I love that. Well, sinless, holy is the same thing for me. We're all whole, we're all sinless. But then, what's the problem? And the problem was, as you shared, when you hold on to the resentment, you can't get in touch with the love. Or the holiness or the love that's there. So it's just the holding on to those thoughts or those beliefs, and then suddenly it's blocked. And also I think it's just so profound to work on forgiveness work continuously, because then in real time one can let go of resentments and then get back to love. So for me before I came on to spiritual work after my kidney failure, I would just hold on to resentments and have bad relationships, and so the opportunity was not there. So that shows you're getting very advanced, Damon.
I don't know about that, but it's